Good morning, Corey Lake Isles. It is Friday morning, the 16th of April. Yesterday's normally tax day. I think that got pushed out to like May, but there was a CDD meeting last night, and I wanted to go through some of it with you guys. I'm at full disclosure here. I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible, a Cliff Notes version of the CDD meeting. I spent 3 hours in this meeting, and the board, I would guess, was probably there for at least another hour. I left right at 9 o'clock, and I think the board was there for another hour. I'm going to give you my thoughts on what I witnessed, what kind of went down as I saw it, some questions that I have, and it's opinion. This is my opinion of what I witnessed, what went on last night, and just some random thoughts about the way things worked and the way things went. And hopefully this will save you. You could read through. I'm assuming they'll send out minutes, or there'll be minutes when the next meeting comes out. But I went through a bunch of the stuff, and I'm just going to go kind of down the list of the agenda that they went through. First, I will say the first couple items are just call to order and things like that. But item 4 is public comments. Public comments are people that come in, I guess, put their name on the list and can go through the comments. My one prevailing thought with all this, and there was some stuff, there was some stuff in there, some additional stuff, but literally 6 people got up to promote having a cricket pitch built, kind of overlaying the soccer field. So like the way pickleball shares the tennis courts and now the roller rink with the tennis people and with the people that are skating, the goal is to have a cricket pitch built on top of, or like sort of adjacent to. There's not enough room for 2 separate fields, but enough for it to be adjacent to one another where they can share the field, and there should be plenty of time. I mean, the guys who spoke on it gave a lot of detail, and that's really my knock on this a little bit. I was there for 3 hours, and I timed it. The first 40 minutes were 6 people basically saying the exact same thing and promoting cricket. I didn't need 45 minutes on the benefits of exercise and cricket, because then after the 45 minutes of 6 people going through it, afterwards when we got to amenities and infrastructure conversation in item 11. Okay, so open comments was item 4. We got to item 11, and the same 7 guys got up and reiterated what they did, but now with a PowerPoint presentation. So we got double the time on a cricket pitch when we still don't even know what the money will cost or any of that stuff. In my opinion, just my opinion, that literally could have taken 15 minutes grand total. We have a group of residents that are interested in a cricket pitch for exercise. These are the benefits. Boom, boom, boom. The board, okay, how they could say no to exploring it would be silly to say no to explore it. But we still don't know what it's going to cost. We don't know what the construction is going to be like. We don't know if we have to cap the property, because that was where it would be being built, is apparently where all the debris, it's sort of like a landfill. It's where all the debris from when construction early on was happening, and like washing cement trucks and things happened all in that field where the soccer field is, and it was kind of capped over. So out of the 3 hours I was there, 45 minutes total between items 4 in the public comments and items 11 in the infrastructure and expansion of amenities section about a cricket pitch. The idea sounds great. Still don't know what the cost is, and now we're going to have next month, after we get cost analysis of whether or not it's going to be beneficial to build this for the 200 maybe residents that actually use it. Again, and I'll revert back to previous gym comments about expenditures versus usage. If there's usage and people are going to use it, I'm all for it. But I didn't need 45 minutes on all that stuff. So when people talk about, we don't want to go to the CDD meeting because of that, it was excruciating to sit through that for that long when it seriously could have been handled. We want a cricket pitch. We have 7 residents here interested in this to speak on it. We're going to consolidate that and do our presentation for 10 minutes with the PowerPoint. And we just want to get approval that we can go forward to explore payment and be done with it. The rest of it just took up in an inordinate amount of time that just really was not necessary. Couple cool things that are happening as far as the facilities. Apparently, they're opening up the facilities back to be used as a rental. So if you are interested in renting the facilities, a woman came up to talk about having her child, I don't know if it was her son or her daughter, I missed that part of it, to have her son or daughter's graduation party in the clubhouse. And based on a recent COVID order, guys, I have notes here, so I'm not, if I sound like I'm reading, it's because I am, and it's because I'm really not that smart enough to memorize all this stuff. But the thing that was mentioned is that there was a special, like an order from the governor saying that there's like no liability, like a limited liability of for COVID. So, couple cool things. The gym will be open 24 hours with your fingerprint. The beach club will be available for rental. And the pool will have chairs put out starting today. So if you need to use the pool, you'll be able to go there. Obviously, they're going to post this, but obviously COVID rules apply. You want to try to be distant. You want to wipe things down if you can. You want to, all those things to be considerate for your other neighbors. But those things are happening. So I would love to take credit for this podcast complaining about the chairs last week ago, but it was in the works already, and these guys stepped up and took care of it. So I will say that. What else was on this list? There was a whole bunch of stuff that was discussed. Public meeting. Another cool thing. They talked about having, and I'm going to do this one last. There was a dermatologist on the call. I'm going to do that one last because that's the one I have a little bit of an issue with, and I'll get into that. But updated landscaping activities, there's nothing really there to update. Everything looks good. They talk about the trees they pull out, the things they clean up. They did a great job on that. The pool furniture I already talked about. We had a conversation about holiday lighting. So essentially, and this is the summed up version, we've been getting holiday lights done, and we had like a budget number that was established about 5 years ago. That number is basically extinct. Like we've been getting our lights installed at that same number, even though it has actually been more expensive to put the lights up with different changes that have been made. I don't think it's been a lot because it didn't seem like there was a lot of profit being chewed up in that 5-year window, but certain small things that weren't on that initial proposal 5 years ago were being done to enhance the look of the neighborhood. The presentation was good. I didn't see the lighting and stuff, but basically I have Philips Hue lights on my house, so I could change my display red, white, and blue, orange for Halloween, red for Valentine's Day. My home level, essentially what was talked about is upgrading the entire holiday light system in Quarry Lake. There will be a cost to do that. And they showed a presentation on the lights. I couldn't see it from where I was sitting. I'm assuming it's very similar to what I have on my house right now. So if you want to see what the changing, like I have Sunset Twilight or something on my lights right now, and I use Philips Hue, H-U-E. You could look up Philips Hue and see a similar type display, and you could change it and modify it. So what essentially would happen is there would be sort of an upfront capital expense to add these new LED lights. LED lights, if you're not familiar, don't run as hot. They last much longer, where a incandescent bulb would burn out in a year, 6 months to a year, and be hot as can be when you touch it. LED lights don't get hot. They're weatherproof, and they last for 20 years. One of the things we did at our house here when we added the solar power was we started systemically replacing all of our regular light bulbs with LED bulbs. They're more expensive, but they last 10 times as long. So the gist of this part with the holiday lights is they wouldn't really necessarily be holiday lights anymore. At least this is the way it sounded. It would be capital to buy the lights, expense for the labor to put the lights everywhere where they need to go. But instead of having guys every year put up, take down, put up, take down, there'll be some of that, but a good portion of the lights, these newer model lights, will go up, And on 4th of July, we could light up the neighborhood red, white, and blue. It's kind of be like the Empire State Building. You can write red for Valentine's Day if they want, orange for Halloween, autumn colors in the fall, spring colors in the spring. So they would stay up. There would be a upfront expense, but it would essentially pay for itself over a period of time. Now, they didn't get into the time frame for that. We didn't get a specific proposal on cost, but that's the general gist of it. And part of me hopes I'm getting some of this wrong, so somebody from the board would actually kind of come on here and correct where I'm wrong, or have some of these vendors come on to talk about it. I would do that as well, and they would get a little bit of plug. But I think I have it pretty close to being on point there. What else did they talk about? Another cool thing that is in the works, and I'll give my thoughts on this as well, is we had POA members come up and talk a little bit about possibly consolidating, CDD POA meeting, and I honestly, I didn't understand this, so I don't know how they're going to do that. If the CDD runs for 3 hours and it wasn't done, so it probably went for 4 hours, how are they going to include a POA meeting in that? I'm not sure, but wanted to make it clear that, the POA and CDD are distinctly different boards, but they are talking about running in conjunction with one another for, I guess, a streamlined process. But I don't really understand exactly how that would go through as far as time-wise during the day. The other thing was the POA came up to discuss the Corey Lake International Food Festival. Sounds very cool. I love the idea of it. Everybody was pretty receptive to it. And the gist of it is to designate a day, have, instead of like we have food trucks come once a month, have like 4 or 5 food trucks and actually 6 or 7 food trucks with some dessert trucks that come. Enough food trucks to accommodate the neighborhood, but not too many where they're not making money. The thing I didn't understand is this going to be put on by the boards and there's no expense to the neighbors, or is it similar to the food trucks at night? They didn't kind of cover that. So I don't know. So if they're going to have them all here in one big day and everybody pays as they go, that's one thing. I don't know the difference of that. Maybe that question could be answered as well. They didn't address it, but the idea of it sounds great. The problem was the tentative date for it is May 27th from 11 to 5 p.m. The concern with that, which was addressed, is there's no vendors established yet. They don't know if they can get vendors. That's literally 6 weeks away from now. And timing-wise, they don't know if they'll be able to do it. And then we also have, and I don't know, this didn't get addressed. This is the first thing I thought about was love bugs being out and about in May. So some of that stuff, they have to work it out. But what I want to point out here is that it's very nice to see this as ways to bring the community together, multiple cultures, and the food trucks are designed to, and this isn't what they were saying, but I'm just kind of giving you an idea of a barbecue truck, a pizza truck, a Thai food truck, a Indian food truck. So there'd be multiple different types of food so people could go and try different things and kind of expand upon what they normally eat. Me, I'm a creature of habit. I eat the same thing all the time, but I would be willing, if it's there and it's accessible, I'd be willing to try stuff because it's close to home. So that's in the works. It may get pushed. It may get pushed to the fall, depending on timing wise. And they also talked about, Dr. Shaw mentioned also adding a DJ, also adding like a giant water slide for kids, like one of those blow up water slides. Someone did mention a bouncy house. I don't know how you're going to make out with a bouncy house in COVID. If we have to stay 6 feet apart, how are you going to put 30 kids in a bouncy house? But they're talking about it. The idea is there. The thought behind bringing the neighborhood is there, which is the thing that I really like more than anything else. So, and it's the COVID limited liability law that was just signed into effect last week. That's what allows the pool to be open, the gym to be open, all those things, and it mitigates risk to the neighborhood. We talked about cricket ad nauseum. I don't want to continue to go into that. But those guys, I mean, there's interest there clearly. I mean, these guys came out to show up to do for that, and which is really cool. it just took such an incredible amount of time to go through it that it was like beating a dead horse. It was over and over again. So the last couple things, there's some issues with some drainage behind Capri Isle that apparently is getting worked out with Ryan Homes. There were some neighbors there talking about how their home doesn't necessarily qualify for whatever's being fixed in the drainage side because of where that house is actually located. Again, another thing, I understand the neighbors coming up with concern about why his house is not in this scope of what they're fixing. However, we spent 20 minutes going back and forth when it was the chairperson attempted to shut it down and say, listen, unfortunately, this isn't within the scope of the CDD. We suggest contacting an attorney with the neighbor, blah, blah, blah. And it should have been stopped right there 5 minutes in, but we went on for another 15 minutes. So this isn't a knock just as much as an observation that if you want more people to show up to this and sit through it or listen to it online, to do 20 minutes on that and 45 minutes on cricket, that's an hour of the 3 hours that I spent there and probably a quarter of the entirety of the meeting. So that's being worked on. And then they started to go through a wants and needs list. I didn't have access to that list. That was an internal document that they were working off of. But a couple of things that came out of that was that the clubhouse needs a new roof. The roof on the clubhouse is 30 years old. It's beat up. The maintenance team has done like rubber band and bubble gum Band-Aids to kind of fix it and keep it working, but it clearly needs to be replaced. And they're estimating roughly $80,000 for that expenditure. How that gets paid for, they'll have to kind of kick that around. But the gist of what happened last night was, hey, look, we know we need this. Let's get 3 bids to see what it's going to be and try to move forward with it. The concern is if we do that and start getting bids and we don't have the money to pay for it, how do we do that? And then we talked about a little bit about special assessments to cover that cost. And then we got into some budget stuff. And I'm going to summarize the budget thing to bottom line. And you could look through, if you go to the link, you could look through the budget numbers. It's like the last 6 or 7 pages. In a nutshell, and again, I'm alluding to stuff that was said and I don't have context for some of it. We replenished our reserve, our reserve fund, which I thought was to be used for things like this. But our reserve fund needs to be roughly and I wrote the numbers down and they repeated it, roughly $490,000. Our reserve, we replenished little under 50,000, 49,000 and change to get our reserve total to $377,000. If that stood as is, we would have a shortfall in our reserves of around $113,000. Not good. However, it was alluded to that there was a settlement of some sort that I don't know the details behind. So, if I don't want anybody to come, chew me out for not getting them right. I'm giving you the disclosure. The settlement is for roughly $225,000. Without that settlement, we'd have a shortfall. With that settlement, we would have a surplus and kind of be in the black, and we'd be over that. Again, I don't know if this is what's going to happen, but ultimately, that settlement money isn't an annual thing. That's, I guess, a one-time thing. If it was me and you were asking me, I would use the $113,000 of that money to offset the surplus and replenish our reserve completely. And the remaining money, either put a little more towards reserve so we don't have to take a chunk next year and use the remainder of that money to get a roof and do some of the other expenses. Now, again, this is a rudimentary 3rd grade opinion on what I heard with limited stuff. I would love for somebody to come on and tell me what I'm missing or where I'm missing it or if I'm close to being on point. But the reality is that $225,000 settlement from wherever it's coming from is going to make us right for the year. And beyond that, I don't know. The last thing I want to talk about, because I want to keep this, I'm already at 20 minutes and, but I'm saving you the 3 hours that I spent. The last thing I want to talk about is item number 5 on the agenda was consideration to provide a dermatology service to the neighborhood. This went on, the doctors who do this, essentially what it is, is very similar to like the big red bus that does blood. A mobile unit comes to Corey Lake Isle, sits in the clubhouse parking lot, and residents, rather than have to go find a dermatologist, make an appointment 3 months out, once a month, these guys will come in, you establish yourself as a client, and your dermatologist basically comes to your door or comes to your neighborhood. It went back and forth for a little bit. The doctors did a nice presentation. I don't think there was anything wrong with that. We went back and forth for a little while, and this is the part that, we talk about bringing the neighborhood together. This got contentious. I don't understand how or why it would get contentious. The question was, do we call this to a vote to let this move forward, or do we table it till the next month? These are just my thoughts, okay? One, someone requested, do we have financial statements on the dermatologists? We don't ask for financial statements for the food trucks, and they come here. They could very easily give somebody food poisoning. We don't have a liability to that. They're coming here. People are eating at their own risk, just like anybody would go to the dermatologist on their own risk. And whether they're financially sound or not is none of our business to disclose. The neighborhood is not accepting any liability for anything. So as I'm sitting there listening to this, I'm thinking, what's the liability? Doesn't sound like any. What would be the downside? It doesn't sound like any. It's no different than you going to the doctor. And what does it cost? Nothing. So, and maybe I'm missing some of that stuff there, but it got heated to a point where there was name calling between board members and a little bit of a ruckus till one neighbor got on Zoom and said, listen, can we calm down a little bit, go to our neutral corners? The reality is that whole discussion, from my perspective, and I don't use a dermatologist. I mean, maybe I should. I got bags under my eyes, but I don't do that stuff. But it's a service provided to residents at no cost, no liability, and no downside. The discussion centered around, what if we do this and a neighbor in the neighborhood is a dermatologist and gets upset that we offered this service to someone to come in and not them? The only analogy I can give you is, I'm sure there's a couple residents in this neighborhood that own restaurants. Does the food truck coming in every month affect their business so dramatically that they shouldn't have that? I don't think so. So that was the only thing that got contentious while I was there. Now, I left before they got deep into budget stuff because 3 hours is my limit. I have the attention span of a 13-year-old, so I have to write everything down and do all that. But credit to the guys who were on the board for being there till probably at least 10 o'clock. It was probably, whatever it was. I think that some of the discussion, like I said, got heated, but it was overall very civil. There was good questions being asked, and it went off fairly well. I think that there's a list. If you go online to CoreyLakeCDD.net, you can look up and see the upcoming meetings. It's all attached within that agenda. Guys, if there's any one thing I would say about the experience last night is this. We got bogged down in minutia quite a bit on things that didn't necessarily have any impact on the neighborhood other than exploring further action. And to spend hours and hours on items that are exploring further action rather than voting, it just seems like a misallocation of time. And the reason I keep harping on the time is this: money can be made. You can make up all sorts of things. The one commodity we in life do not have more of is time. Whatever the time we have is the time we have. So by sitting there for 3 hours, I'm okay with that. But the fact of the matter is, I think there's more productive ways to spend time than do that stuff going on and on. Now, look, it's not a knock on the board. Kudos to those guys for doing the thing they did, being there for that long and taking some of the questions and going through it. I just think that I think maybe exploring Robert's Rules of Order and conducting 3 pros, 3 cons, mild discussion, and call to a vote. If you're not familiar with Robert's Rules, that's the gist of it in a summary. That might be a good idea for that to be held a little bit more to the standard. So I hope this 25 minutes gave you guys a glimpse into the CDD meeting last night. I will try to continue to do this if I can and keep people informed. If you have any questions, you could email me, Corey Lake News Pod Network at yahoo.com, CLNPN at yahoo.com. please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends if they want, a summary of things going on with some opinion and a Yankee accent. By all means, I will do my best to continue to support the neighborhood in this way and continue to try to bring the neighborhood together. Again, these are just my opinions. This is just me looking at it from my perspective. It's not meant to be inflammatory towards anybody. It's just observations. So, guys, I hope you have a great weekend. It's supposed to be nice today and tomorrow. I think it's going to rain on Sunday, of course, because I have family in town. And hopefully I'll catch you guys next week, or depending on when other news breaks in the neighborhood. Have a good day. Have a great weekend. Talk to you guys soon.